Welcome, curious minds, to the deep dive. Today, we're plunging into one of America's most enduring and, honestly, most haunting cold cases, the boy in the box.
Mm-hmm.
We're setting the scene back in February 1957. Quiet woods, Fox Chase, Philadelphia.
Right.
And it was there a discovery was made that kicked off a mystery that just went on for decades. So in this deep dive, we're going to unpack that initial shock, the long search for answers, and, importantly, the huge breakthrough. Finally, after 65 years, this forgotten child got his name back.
Yeah.
But as you'll hear, even with a name, so many crucial questions are just still hanging there.
It's such a unique case, isn't it? The complete anonymity. For so long, it really grabbed the nation's attention because of that. He became, America's unknown child.
A heartbreaking title.
It really is. And we'll explore not just the facts, but those persistent questions about why. Why did this child just vanish so completely?
So let's go back to the discovery, February 25th, 1957. It's chilling. There was a young college student apparently taking a shortcut through those woods in Fox Chase.
Yeah.
And he stumbles upon, well, a discarded cardboard box.
And not just any box, right? It was specifically the kind they used back then to ship bassinets.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And inside, the naked body of a small boy, wrapped in a sort of flannel blanket, bruised, pale, obviously cold.
Awful.
Estimated age, maybe 4 to 6 years old.
Yeah.
And just nothing, no identification anywhere, a complete blank.
And the scene itself, it told investigators this wasn't just, someone dumping a body quickly. There were definite signs of abuse, bruises, some head trauma.
Right.
But what was really disturbing, maybe even confusing, was the evidence someone had tried to, clean him up. He'd been bathed, his fingernails were trimmed,
Wow.
and his hair had been cut recently. But, really unevenly cut clippings were still on his body.
So strange. It suggests, what, some kind of preparation?
Mm.
Or maybe trying to hide his identity?
It's hard to know for sure. Deliberate concealment, maybe? Or some kind of strange, perverse attempt at care before leaving him there. It adds layers to the mystery.
And the police response was immediate and massive, wasn't it?
Mm-hmm.
They really threw everything at it. Fingerprinting the boy, obviously, checking hospitals, orphanages, all the nearby towns.
Mm-hmm. A huge undertaking.
But then they did something pretty extraordinary for the time. They distributed flyers, mailed out posters.
And the gas bills. That's the detail everyone remembers.
Yeah, putting his postmortem photo, and they dressed him, seated him to look more like a living child inside Philadelphia gas bills, reaching hundreds of thousands of homes, just hoping someone, anyone, would recognize him.
An incredible effort, truly. You have to imagine the hope invested in that. And yet, what followed was just this profound silence.
Nothing.
Absolutely nothing. No one came forward. No reports of a missing kid matching his description, despite all that publicity.
How is that even possible?
That's the core of the mystery, isn't it? How does a child just seem to be erased from life so completely? No school records, no doctor visits mentioned, no family stepping forward. It's baffling.
So the case goes cold, but it never really went away, did it? It just lingered.
Mm-hmm.
Decades passed.
Right. It became this sort of generational case, passed down from detective to detective, always there, unsolved.
And I imagine thousands of tips came in over those
Absolutely. Thousands. But most just fizzled out, led nowhere.
And theories must have just sprung up constantly. What were some of the main ones?
Well, you had all sorts. Maybe he was from a foster home nearby, one that wasn't, strictly above board.
Okay.
Or the idea that maybe his parents sold him and then something terrible happened later. Rumors about secret adoptions gone wrong, even connections to criminal rings, or maybe a child hidden away in a mental institution.
Dark stuff.
Really dark. But none of it could ever be proven. They were just stories trying to make sense of the impossible.
Stories born out of that silence.
Exactly. And meanwhile, the boy himself, he was eventually buried in 1957 in a potter's field.
Under a gravestone they just read, "Heavenly Father, bless this unknown boy."
For decades, that was his only identifier.
Just heartbreaking. Until 2022. 65 years later. Suddenly, there's this huge breakthrough. Science finally catches up, maybe.
It really did. Advancements in DNA, specifically forensic genetic genealogy. It's the same technique that's cracked other really famous cold cases.
Right, I've heard about that, using public DNA databases.
Exactly. You find distant relatives, people who've submitted their DNA for ancestry tests, and then you painstakingly build back family trees. It's incredibly detailed work, takes a lot of time and expertise, but it works.
And in this case, it led to a name.
It did. After 65 years, the boy in the box was identified. His name was Joseph Augustus Zarelli,
Joseph Augustus Zarelli.
born in 1953, which made him just 4 years old when he died.
Only 4. Younger than some of the estimates.
Yes, and they found his birth certificate. It was real. They even identified his parents.
And the parents were still alive?
Remarkably, yes. Both were still living in 2022, though they were separated.
Wow. So the police hold this press conference. A huge moment. They announce his name, Joseph Augustus Zarelli. But then they say they're not releasing the parents' names, which, feels bittersweet. Like, we finally have his name, but the story still feels incomplete.
Yeah.
Why hold back the parents' names?
From an investigative perspective, it makes sense, even if it's frustrating for the public. Identifying Joseph was a massive step, but it didn't automatically solve the how or the who.
Yeah.
Withholding names protects the ongoing investigation. They might still be interviewing people, maybe family members, trying to build a case or just understand the full circumstances. Releasing names too soon could jeopardize that, tip people off, change stories.
Right, compromises the integrity.
Exactly. The police themselves said the truth was, quote, still unfolding, and they acknowledged that justice, in a legal sense, might never come.
Which implies they might know more than they're saying, but perhaps can't prove it in court. Or maybe the people responsible are gone.
It could mean many things. It suggests complexity. Maybe the parents weren't directly involved in his death, but were involved in the circumstances leading up to it, or the concealment. It's still an active case, technically reopened.
So we have his name, Joseph. But that central sadness,
Yeah.
it's still there, isn't it? The questions are almost bigger now. Who failed this little boy? Who hurt him? And how could he just slip through every single crack, be invisible for 65 years? It says something about the world then, maybe even now.
It absolutely does. And it's so important, I think, to remember him now as Joseph. Not just a mystery, not just a case file. He was a little boy who deserved safety, love. A completely different story.
Yeah.
Giving him his name back, it matters. It restores some dignity. It honors the work of everyone who never gave up on finding out who he was.
It's true. Sometimes the most profound stories, the ones that stick with you, are hidden in these long silences, these deep mysteries. Joseph Augustus Zarelli has his name.
Yeah.
That's a victory,
A
definitely.
significant one.
But the quiet around his final days, those unanswered questions, it makes you think, doesn't it? About other hidden lives, other untold stories still out there, just sort of echoing, waiting for someone to finally listen. Thinking about Joseph's story, it really makes you wonder, what other truths are just waiting in the quiet corners of history, waiting for their moment?